The morning light poured over the coastal town of Seabreeze like syrup, warm and sticky, the kind of day that made you forget the storms brewing beyond the horizon. Families strolled along the beach, children laughed as they chased seagulls, and elderly couples sat on benches, holding hands and reminiscing about simpler times. It was the kind of day that felt invincible, but whispers of Hurricane Milton loomed on the local news, warning of a powerful storm threatening to disrupt this idyllic scene. Mary Ellis, a middle-aged woman with sun-kissed skin and a deep love for her hometown, stood on her porch, sipping coffee and squinting at the distant waves. She was a lifelong resident of Seabreeze and had weathered her share of hurricanes, but Milton was different. The meteorologist's warnings had sent chills down her spine. This storm was massive, and the predictions were grim. As the day wore on, the sky transformed from cerulean to a slate gray, an eerie shift that left Mary feeling unsettled. By evening, the first gusts of wind began to rattle the shutters. She turned on the news, and the weather report confirmed her worst fears. Hurricane Milton was gaining strength and was expected to make landfall within hours. The local shelters were opening, and Mary felt a tug in her gut. She glanced around her cozy home, filled with memories of laughter and love, but also reminders of the darkness that could come with storms. Her husband, Tom, had died in a storm years ago, swept away while trying to help their neighbors. The thought made her heart ache, but she shook it off. She couldn't let fear consume her. As she packed an emergency bag with essentials, water, flashlights, a battery-operated radio, her phone buzzed with a notification. A new storm was forming, Hurricane Nadine, and although it was still far away, there was a 20% chance it could develop into a tropical storm. The news sent a shiver down her spine, but she dismissed it as paranoia. With the winds howling outside, Mary made the decision to head to the community center where others would gather for safety. The streets, usually alive with activity, were eerily silent, punctuated only by the rustling of palm fronds. She stepped out of her home, locking the door behind her, and made her way down the street. As she walked, the air grew thick with tension. The clouds swirled ominously overhead, and the wind whipped at her clothes, trying to pull her back. Each step felt like an uphill battle against the elements, and dread filled her heart. It felt as if the town was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable crash of wind and rain. When Mary reached the community center, she found it bustling with activity. Families huddled together, sharing stories and trying to distract themselves from the approaching storm. But Mary felt a sense of isolation. The laughter and chatter felt distant, as if she were on the outside looking in. As night fell, the first raindrops began to fall, heavy, slapping against the pavement like tiny fists. The storm was upon them. Inside, the flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the wind howled outside like a creature in pain. Mary took a deep breath, trying to ground herself amidst the chaos. Suddenly, the power flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Gasps filled the air, and the chatter died down. A woman's voice cut through the silence, shaky and frightened. "What's happening?" Mary's heart raced. The eerie quiet was unsettling, amplifying the sound of the storm outside. The rain pounded harder against the roof, and the wind roared like a beast unleashed. The radio crackled to life, the static screeching in a way that felt almost malevolent. "Stay calm," the voice on the radio urged, but Mary felt anything but calm. She reached for her flashlight, casting beams of light into the shadows. Around her, people clutched each other, eyes wide with fear. Then came a loud bang, a deafening sound that shook the building. Everyone jumped, the lights flickered back on momentarily before plunging them back into darkness. Mary's heart raced. Was it the storm? "Stay close," she shouted, trying to sound brave. "We'll get through this together." Outside, the world was unrecognizable. The storm raged with a ferocity that sent debris flying through the air, and Mary could only imagine what destruction Milton was bringing to her beloved Seabreeze. The windows rattled violently, and for a moment, she thought she heard a scream carried on the wind. "What was that?" Someone whispered, fear lacing their voice. Mary's skin prickled. "I don't know," she said, though she felt a deep unease creeping in. The storm's intensity increased, rattling the very foundations of the building. The radio buzzed again, cutting through the rising panic. "We have reports of injuries and damages across Seabreeze. Please stay indoors and remain calm." The darkness felt suffocating, and Mary held her breath, straining to hear the outside world. The storm roared, but beneath it, there was something else, a low rumble like a growl that sent chills down her spine. As the hours passed, time blurred, and the storm continued its relentless assault. The wind howled, the rain lashed against the building, and fear seeped into their hearts. Mary couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that the storm was not just a natural disaster but something more sinister. The hours dragged on, the community center becoming a makeshift refuge as Hurricane Milton wreaked havoc outside. Mary sat in a corner, trying to stay calm amid the chaos. Around her, whispers filled the air, stories of lost homes and terrified families, but also tales that crept into her mind like shadows. Someone mentioned the old stories, legends of storms that were said to carry souls, spirits trapped in the swirling winds. Mary had heard them as a child, tales spun by her grandmother about the sea's rage and the darkness that lurked beneath the waves. When the storms come, her grandmother would say, "You must be wary. They can take what they want, and they are hungry." Mary shook her head, trying to dispel the memories. But the stories felt alive in the storm's fury, clawing at her sanity. The wind outside seemed to howl her grandmother's words, echoing with an unholy glee. Suddenly, a loud crash jolted her from her thoughts. It sounded close, too close. The lights flickered again, casting brief flashes of light across the room, illuminating terrified faces. Mary stood, instinctively moving towards the source of the noise. "What was that?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. A man in the back spoke up, his voice low and trembling. "It came from the storage room. I think something fell." Mary glanced towards the hallway leading to the storage area, her instincts screaming at her to stay away, but curiosity got the better of her. "I'll check it out," she said, trying to sound brave. As she approached the hallway, the air grew thick with tension. The sounds of the storm faded slightly, replaced by an eerie silence that settled over the building like a heavy blanket. With each step, the darkness seemed to swell around her, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. She reached the storage room door and hesitated. It was slightly ajar, swaying gently as if inviting her in. Heart racing, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was cluttered with old furniture and supplies, a musty smell filling the air. Moonlight filtered through a small window, casting ghostly shadows that danced along the walls. In the far corner, something lay sprawled on the ground, something heavy and dark. Mary took a cautious step forward, the floor creaking beneath her weight. She could see now that it was a heavy metal shelf that had fallen, its contents strewn across the floor. But it was not just the shelf that caught her eye. Among the debris, something glimmered. Mary knelt, reaching for the object. It was a small, ornate box, intricately carved with swirling patterns that seemed to pulse in the dim light. A chill ran through her as she traced her fingers over the surface. Suddenly, a voice echoed in her mind, soft and inviting. "Open it." She recoiled, shaking her head. This wasn't real. It couldn't be, yet the pull was undeniable, like a thread drawing her closer. With trembling hands, she opened the box, and a wave of cold air rushed out, wrapping around her like an embrace. Inside lay a collection of trinkets, old photographs, dried flowers, and what appeared to be a lock of hair tied with a fraying ribbon. Each item felt heavy with memories, secrets locked away from the world. As she sifted through them, a sense of dread filled her. Mary's heart raced as she pulled out a photograph, its edges yellowed and worn. It depicted a group of people standing in front of a house, faces smiling but eyes hollow, as if they were mere shells of their former selves. The house in the background looked familiar, her grandmother's house. "What?" she whispered, feeling the weight of the past press down on her. The storm raged outside, but inside the storage room, time felt suspended. Then the whispers returned, louder now, mingling with the roar of the wind. "Help us," they pleaded. "We are lost." Mary dropped the photograph, stumbling back. The box clattered to the ground, its contents spilling out like a forgotten curse. The whispers morphed into anguished cries, echoing in her mind, and she clamped her hands over her ears, trying to block them out. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her, plunging her into darkness. Panic surged within her, and she fumbled for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. "Let me out," she shouted, her voice cracking. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a presence looming in the shadows, a cold breath brushing against her skin. Mary pressed her back against the wall, fear coiling tightly around her throat. The box lay open on the floor, its contents swirling with a dark energy that made her skin crawl. And then she saw it, a figure in the shadows, translucent and wretched, eyes filled with sorrow and desperation. "Help us," it whispered, reaching out with a skeletal hand, a storm of anguish swirling around it. Mary gasped, heart pounding in her chest. She had to escape. With one last surge of determination, she lunged for the door, throwing her weight against it. It swung open, and she stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for air. She ran back to the main room, her heart racing, the whispers fading behind her. The community center felt different now, the atmosphere thick with an unseen presence. She glanced around, searching for familiar faces, but everyone seemed lost in their own fear, their eyes wide and vacant. "What happened?" a woman asked, noticing Mary's pale face. "I don't know," Mary said, trembling, "but there's something in there, something not right." The woman paled, glancing nervously at the hallway. "We need to stay together," she said, her voice shaky. "The storm, it's changing." As if on cue, the wind outside howled even louder, shaking the very walls of the building. The radio crackled back to life, but the words were garbled, drowned out by the chaos. Reports of unusual activity, evacuate if possible. Mary's breath hitched. Was the storm not just a storm? As the winds howled, the weight of the whispers lingered in her mind, and she knew that whatever was coming was more than just the physical tempest. As the hours dragged on, the storm outside intensified, the howling wind clawing at the community center like a wild beast desperate to be let in. Mary tried to ground herself, focusing on the faces around her, but the fear that enveloped the room was palpable. Each thunderclap felt like a warning, a prelude to something darker lurking just beyond the walls. "Did anyone see what happened in the storage room?" a man asked, his voice trembling. Mary felt a knot tighten in her stomach. I don't think it was just the storm," she stammered. "There was something there, something not of this world." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of disbelief and fear. They were all familiar with the stories of the past, of storms that took more than just material possessions. The old tales, whispered among the townsfolk, of spirits and shadows that clung to the remnants of their lives. Just then, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the room with a ghostly glow. The radio sputtered to life again, the announcer's voice crackling through the static. "Residents of Seabreeze, we are monitoring an unprecedented situation. Hurricane Milton has intensified, but we are also receiving reports of a second storm developing rapidly. Hurricane Nadine, stay alert." Mary's heart raced. A second storm, with a 20% chance of forming into a tropical storm. It felt like an omen, a dark foreshadowing of what was to come. The realization settled in her bones, heavy and cold. She wasn't just facing one storm, she was caught in the grip of something far worse, a convergence of nature's fury and the restless spirits of the past. Outside, the storm surged, wind screaming like a banshee. A group of people clustered near the windows, watching the chaos unfold. Mary joined them, peering through the glass. She could see the trees bending, the ocean churning violently, waves crashing with a fury that felt almost sentient. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and Mary felt a strange energy in the air, a shift, a pulse that resonated deep within her. "What's happening?" someone shouted, panic rising. "Stay calm," Mary urged, though her own heart raced. She could feel the weight of the storm pressing against the building, the air thick with an unsettling charge. It was as if the storm itself was aware of them, and it didn't like what it found. The whispers returned, a chorus of anguished cries seeping into her mind. "Help us, we are lost." They swirled around her, echoing in the depths of her soul, tugging at her heartstrings. "Mary, are you okay?" The concerned voice of the woman from earlier broke through her haze, snapping her back to reality. "I don't know," Mary said, shaking her head. "I feel like something is watching us, like the storm is alive." Just then, the radio emitted a jarring sound, cutting through the chaos. "Evacuate immediately. Repeat, evacuate." Unusual activity reported. But before the announcer could finish, the lights went out again, plunging them back into darkness. Panic surged through the room, and Mary felt the temperature drop, an icy chill that seeped into her bones. In the pitch black, the whispers grew louder, filling the silence with desperate pleas. "Help us, we are lost." "Someone get a flashlight," a voice shouted. Mary's hands trembled as she fumbled in her bag for the flashlight she had packed. It felt like an eternity before she found it, flicking it on and casting a beam of light into the surrounding darkness. The beam danced wildly, illuminating frightened faces and shadows that seemed to twist and contort in the darkness. Then, something caught her eye. A figure stood at the edge of the beam, a silhouette cloaked in darkness. Mary's breath caught in her throat as the whispers escalated, turning into a cacophony of screams and wails. "Who's there?" someone shouted, fear lacing their voice. The figure stepped closer, emerging into the light, and Mary gasped. It was a woman, or at least she had once been one. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale and translucent, and her hair hung in tatters. The room froze, every breath caught in their throats as they stared at the apparition before them. "Help us," the woman pleaded, her voice hauntingly familiar. "We are lost, trapped by the storm." Mary's heart raced as recognition washed over her. This was the spirit she had seen in the storage room, the very essence of the stories her grandmother had told. The souls swept away by the storms, now haunting the remnants of their lives. "No," Mary whispered, taking a step back. "You're not real. You can't be." The spirit raised a bony hand, pointing at Mary. "You must listen. The storms, they are not just weather, they are a cycle, a hunger that needs to be fed. We were taken, and now you are in danger." The weight of her words pressed down on Mary, suffocating her. She could feel the cold tendrils of fear creeping up her spine, and the room erupted into chaos as people shouted and screamed, some trying to flee. "Stay together," Mary shouted, trying to regain control. But the figure remained, the whispers growing louder, the voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of despair. The radio crackled again, but it was nothing more than static, a chilling reminder of their isolation. "We need to get out of here," someone screamed, and a surge of panic rippled through the crowd. Mary took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. "We can't just leave, we need to figure out what this storm wants." The spirit's gaze locked onto hers, and for a moment, Mary felt a connection, a surge of empathy that cut through the fear. "You must find the source. It lies within the storm's heart. The box, it will guide you." "Guide me?" Mary asked, confusion mixing with her fear. "What do you mean?" But before she could receive an answer, the figure faded into the darkness, the whispers dissipating like smoke in the wind. The room felt emptier now, the chilling presence lingering like an uninvited guest. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, but the atmosphere was charged with dread. The radio sputtered to life once more, the announcer's voice frantic. "Unprecedented flooding and high winds reported. All residents are urged to evacuate immediately." But Mary knew they were running out of time. With Hurricane Nadine looming and Milton wreaking havoc, she felt a sense of urgency pressing upon her. "We have to go back to the storage room," she said, determination rising within her. "We need that box." A chorus of objections erupted around her, but Mary silenced them with a fierce gaze. "If we don't confront this, we're all at risk. We need to know what the storm wants from us." With a deep breath, she stepped toward the hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the whispers swirling around her, a chorus of lost souls urging her on. The darkness felt alive, an entity that was both terrifying and compelling, drawing her deeper into its embrace. As she reached the storage room door, she hesitated, her hand hovering over the knob. What awaited her inside? Would she find answers, or would the darkness consume her whole? With a steadying breath, she opened the door, stepping into the unknown, the weight of the storm pressing against her like a tangible force. Mary stepped back into the storage room, the air thick with the remnants of the storm's wrath. The flickering flashlight cast long shadows that danced along the walls, creating a distorted reflection of her fears. As she scanned the room, her heart sank at the sight of the scattered contents of the box she had opened earlier. Memories lay strewn across the floor, each item a piece of someone's forgotten life. The whispers grew louder as she stepped deeper into the room. "Help us," they echoed, filling her mind with a haunting urgency. Mary could feel the weight of their sorrow, a palpable ache that tugged at her heart. "Where is it?" she murmured to herself, searching for the ornate box. In the chaos, it had rolled beneath a stack of debris. She knelt, reaching under the wreckage, her fingers brushing against the cool surface of the box. As she pulled it free, a sudden chill swept through the room, and she shivered. "Mary," a voice called from the doorway, startling her. It was the woman from the community center, eyes wide with fear. "We have to go. The storm is getting worse." "I know," Mary replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "But I have to understand this. The storm, it's not just wind and rain, it's something more." The woman shook her head, stepping closer. "Please, we can't stay here. You don't know what you're dealing with." Mary held the box tightly, the ornate carvings glowing faintly in the dim light. "But I need to know what it wants," she insisted, her gaze locked on the woman's terrified face. "If we're going to survive, I have to confront it." A loud crash echoed from outside, rattling the walls of the building. The woman's eyes widened in panic. "You're playing with forces you don't understand. We need to leave, now." As if in response to her plea, the ground shook violently beneath them. Mary steadied herself against the wall, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She could feel the storm's anger surging, a wrathful energy that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. With a deep breath, she opened the box again, its hinges creaking ominously. Inside, the items glimmered, a kaleidoscope of lost lives and memories. The photographs, the flowers, and the lock of hair all told stories of those who had been claimed by the storms, victims of the same fate that had befallen her own husband. "What are you doing?" the woman begged, but Mary was lost in the moment, her fingers grazing over the photographs. Suddenly, a gust of wind slammed the door shut, plunging them back into darkness. The flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that seemed to swirl around them like a storm of despair. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of anguished voices enveloping her. "Help us, help us, help us." "Stop it," Mary shouted, her voice echoing in the darkness. "I can't help you if you don't show me what you need." In that moment, the whispers quieted, and a chilling silence settled over the room. Mary held her breath, the air thick with anticipation. The box glowed faintly, and she could feel the spirits urging her on, guiding her deeper into their plight. "Show me," she whispered, her heart racing. Suddenly, the photographs lifted from the box, suspended in midair, swirling around her like a vortex. Faces of those lost to the storms floated before her, their eyes filled with sorrow and longing. The memories flooded her mind, moments of joy and despair, laughter and grief, all intertwined in a tapestry of life that had been violently ripped apart. Mary closed her eyes, letting the memories wash over her. She felt the pain of each soul, the fear that came with being lost in the storm. They were trapped, yearning for release, and somehow, she was their tether to the world. A vision flashed before her eyes, a house, much like her grandmother's, standing strong against the storm, but the ground beneath it was unstable, cracks spreading like veins. She could feel the impending disaster, the weight of the storm threatening to swallow it whole. "Stop it," she cried out, realizing the significance of the vision. "You don't have to suffer anymore. I can help you find peace." With newfound determination, she focused on the box, its glow intensifying as the memories swirled around her. "I will find a way," she promised, feeling the spirit's energy surge in response. The door slammed open, and the storm's fury rushed in, howling like a banshee. The woman screamed, but Mary stood her ground, refusing to let fear take hold. She was their only chance, and she had to see this through. The room began to shake violently, the walls groaning under the pressure of the storm. "Mary," the woman shouted, grabbing her arm, "we have to go." But Mary shook her head. "No, I can't leave you all behind. You're here because of me. I need to finish this." The spirits surged around her, their presence electrifying. "Help us, help us." As the storm roared outside, Mary felt a wave of energy build within her, a connection to the spirits that transcended the physical realm. She focused on the box, the memories swirling like a storm of color. "I'll set you free," she vowed, feeling the power coursing through her veins. With a final surge of determination, she raised the box high above her head, channeling the spirit's energy into a single thought. a wish for peace, for release from the storm's grip. In that moment, everything shifted. The storm outside roared louder, a vortex of chaos that enveloped the room. But amidst the fury, a calm settled within her heart. She could feel the spirit's gratitude, their energy merging with her own. "Now," Mary shouted, releasing the box into the storm's embrace. The box flew through the air, and with a blinding flash of light, it shattered against the wall, scattering its contents like stars across the room. The air crackled with energy, and for a brief moment, the storm outside ceased its rage, the world holding its breath. The spirits surged forward, their ethereal forms swirling around Mary, filling her with a warmth that pushed back the cold. "Thank you," they whispered in unison, their voices echoing like a haunting lullaby. As the last of their energy enveloped her, Mary felt a wave of peace wash over her. The storm's fury faded, the winds quieting to a gentle breeze. The whispers that had haunted her for so long transformed into a soothing melody, guiding her back to reality. And then it was gone, the presence, the urgency, the chaos. She opened her eyes to find the room still and calm, the storm outside reduced to a gentle patter of rain. "Mary," the woman said, her voice trembling. I think it's over," Mary whispered, disbelief washing over her. As the light returned, she looked around, the room bathed in a soft glow. The photographs lay scattered on the ground, but the weight of sorrow that had filled the air was gone. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind a serene silence that enveloped Seabreeze like a blanket. The world felt different now, lighter, free from the shadows of the past. The woman stepped closer, eyes wide with astonishment. "What just happened?" Mary took a deep breath, feeling the remnants of the spirits linger in her heart. "I think they found peace," she said, a smile breaking through her disbelief. And in that moment, she knew that although the storms would always come, so too would the strength to face them. Together, they had weathered the storm and emerged stronger on the other side. The morning after Hurricane Milton swept through Seabreeze, the world felt reborn. The storm had left its mark, a trail of destruction that stretched as far as the eye could see. Trees lay uprooted, debris cluttered the streets, and the familiar sights of her town were marred by nature's wrath. Mary stepped outside the community center, her heart heavy with the memories of the night before. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light over the town, but the remnants of fear still lingered in the air. "Mary," a familiar voice called, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Sarah, a neighbor who lived a few blocks down. Her face was smudged with dirt, but her eyes sparkled with relief. "We thought we'd lost you." "I almost did," Mary replied, glancing around at the destruction. "But we made it through." Together, they walked through the streets, surveying the damage. The once bustling town now lay in disarray, but there was a sense of unity in the air, neighbors helping neighbors, lending a hand wherever needed. As they approached the remains of Mary's house, her heart sank. The roof had caved in, the walls battered by the storm's fury. "It's gone," she murmured, tears stinging her eyes. But Sarah placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're safe. That's what matters. We'll rebuild together." Mary nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for the community that had always supported her. Despite the destruction, the bonds of friendship felt stronger than ever. In the following days, they gathered as a community, pooling resources and labor to help those in need. Mary felt a renewed sense of purpose as she volunteered to assist in the recovery efforts, her heart swelling with pride for the resilience of her town. But even amidst the chaos, memories of the storm haunted her thoughts. The spirits she had encountered lingered in her mind, a reminder of the lives lost and the darkness that had threatened to consume them. One evening, as she sat with a group of neighbors, a sense of calm washed over her. They shared stories of the storm, their voices weaving together a tapestry of hope and resilience. In those moments, Mary realized that the spirits had not just sought help, they had also sought connection. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Mary stood up. "I want to honor those we lost," she said, her voice steady. "Let's create a memorial, a place to remember and celebrate their lives." A hush fell over the group, and one by one, they nodded in agreement. It was a way to acknowledge the past while looking forward to the future, a chance to heal and unite as a community. Days turned into weeks, and the memorial took shape. With each brick laid, Mary felt a sense of closure enveloping her heart. The whispers that had haunted her transformed into a gentle lullaby, a reminder that the spirits were at peace. Finally, the day of the unveiling arrived. The sun shone brightly, and the air was filled with a sense of reverence as the community gathered to honor those who had been lost. Mary stood at the forefront, her heart full as she looked out at the faces of her neighbors. "Today we remember the lives that were swept away by the storms," she said, her voice unwavering. "But we also celebrate the strength of our community, the love that binds us together." As she spoke, she felt a warmth envelop her, a sense of connection that transcended the physical realm. She closed her eyes, allowing the memories of the spirits to wash over her once more. They were there with her, guiding her, reminding her that even in the darkest of times, hope would always find a way to shine through. With a deep breath, she unveiled the memorial, revealing a beautifully crafted structure adorned with photographs, flowers, and tokens of love. The air filled with the scent of blooms, and Mary felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. As the community gathered around the memorial, she could feel the spirit's presence lingering, a soft whisper of gratitude brushing against her soul. They were free, released from the storm's grip, and in that moment, Mary understood the true power of connection, how love could transcend even the most turbulent of storms. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold, Mary knew that the storm had changed her, but it had also shown her the strength of unity and resilience. The whispers of the past had transformed into a melody of hope, echoing in her heart as they faced the future together, stronger than ever before.